Thank you all so much. We're going to wrap up the Freedom Hour here with my dear friend Roya. Some of my friends earlier were very kind in thanking me, so now it's my turn to thank you as the person who really helped me see the freedom value in Bitcoin. So thank you for being here, Roya. Let's give a big, huge round of applause for Roya.
Thank you.
So when I first met you, I didn't know you were like a Bitcoin user. I knew you had been helping women become entrepreneurs and earn money for their time and labor in Afghanistan and learn about technology, and that you were liberating them in their minds with new ideas and dreams for the future through all the work that you did, which some people here may know of, and we'll get to that later. But what I'm really curious about is when you first started using Bitcoin, how much was one Bitcoin?
It was around $100.
$100, okay. So she was operationally using Bitcoin to pay her staff of her company that employed women in Afghanistan back in 2013. At a time when few people believed in the technology, right? It was worth about $100. That's what the world valued one Bitcoin at. Obviously, you know, it's done pretty well since then. It's $100,000 now. So what about it back then made you believe that it could work? Or what about it sort of forced you to use it? You know, why couldn't the other options work at that time for you?
Sure. Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much from Bitcoin Pulse Summit for having me here. It's back in a time when we had a company and we had hundreds of the women who started working for my company, and companies grow. And we built a platform called Women X with my business partner in New York. And the idea is that we hiring the women as a bloggers and programmers, and we can pay them. And I wanted that the women get their financial independence, and especially in technology, like hiring them. But there was an issue. Many of these women didn't have a bank account. And it wasn't only about Afghanistans. I mean, at that time, 85% of the Afghan population didn't trust the bank, and they didn't have bank account, and they're using Hawala system. But it wasn't only about Afghanistans. Around 740 million women around the world, and specifically, mostly in South Asia, they don't have bank account. Either they don't have an ID, or because of poverty, or because there is no traditional banking system, or they don't know about the financial system. But specifically for Afghanistan at the time, it was about the social barriers, and many of the men likes to control the women's lives, and especially through the finance.
So if you tried to pay them in cash, the male relatives would take it.
Yes.
And they wouldn't let them open a bank account, but they had phones.
Yes,
and
they had a phone.
They could use like Facebook, or they could get a Bitcoin wallet, right?
Yes. At that time, because we have to deposit the money in the mail account, and the men usually take the money, and you cannot do anything about that. And they were looking at the mobile money, which was M-Pesa at the time. It started in Afghanistan, but it wasn't really implemented in the whole country, so we had an issue. So we have to use the Hawala system, but again, Hawala, it was very male-dominated. Again, they have to send their men to take the money. And we heard about Bitcoin. And that's how we implemented the Bitcoin to paying the women.
And it must have been such a roller coaster because you start using it, Bitcoin starts the year at 30, 40, 50 bucks, gets to $100, gets to $800, gets to $1,200, and then it crashes, spectacularly over the following months, all the way back down to $200. So you do the right thing. She makes everybody whole who she had paid at the dollar rate at what they should have earned. But you couldn't get it out of your mind, the Bitcoin thing, even though it maybe wasn't going to work at that point for your business, perhaps because of how volatile it was. You told me that you couldn't get this out of your mind, that there could be money that women could actually control. So you started using it in the Digital Citizen Fund, right? You started teaching women about that. So, tell us about that era, let's say 2014 to 2021. What were some of your biggest highlights working with Bitcoin during that time?
Sure. After the collapse of the Bitcoin, when it was crashing in end of the 2013, we started to using like Foundation Digital Citizen Fund to empowering young women to get access to the digital literacy and financial literacy. We're teaching the young women to learn about basic things, how to work with a computer, to level that they learn about blockchain, they learn about Bitcoin, they learn about robotics. And we helped more than 24,000 so far that they get in our programs.
24,000?
Yes.
Amazing.
from Science 2014. We also built in 13 technology centers, which in each of our centers, our financial literacy was our program that we're teaching the Bitcoin. And the idea is that obviously at that time it was, you get a lot of critique for using the Bitcoin. People call you you do fraud and all of these things. But I think that the problem was about education. Many people don't know how to use a Bitcoin, and we decided to provide this education. That's why we put it in our programs, financial literacy, and Bitcoin was part of that. We provide this training for these young women to learn about cryptocurrency, but specifically about Bitcoin.
And two of the stories you told me, which I thought were most amazing from that era, where one was a woman who worked for you, who had to flee Afghanistan because of political violence and fear with her family. You know, they ended up going through Iran, through Turkey, made it to Europe, and she was able to take her seed phrase with her and start a new life in Germany. And over that period of time, Bitcoin increased in value pretty dramatically, and it's just amazing. It's like a seed that grew into a tree. Same thing with one of your siblings, your sister, Elaha. What Roya told me, which was pretty amazing, was that at the time Elaha was basically, you know, at the time when you were paying the women in Bitcoin, that it's not like the merchants all accepted Bitcoin, right? Very early. So Elaha would buy the Bitcoin from them, and then they would have cash, right? And then she saved the Bitcoin and ended up financing her education at Cornell with it, which was amazing. So I thought those were two cool stories from that time.
Yes, I mean, she accepted at university. She got a little bit of scholarship, but she has to pay the rest of that. And she sold the Bitcoin, and
but she sold it in like 2018 or so. Yes, so she had saved it. It had gone up very dramatically. And you know, this is what you told me, that it allows. This is a technology that allows people to bypass the barriers that are holding folks back. And I guess you said you couldn't get it out of your mind for that reason, right?
Yes, it's representative of the freedom, agency, and identity, especially for the women who were for a long time excluded from the financial economy. Then
one thing you told me when I was interviewing you for a story that I wrote that became part of my book, Check Your Financial Privilege. She's one of the characters in it. You told me that in early 2021, you were kind of getting some weird vibes about, let's say, the American, let's say, occupation of Afghanistan. Even though it had been really great for women in many ways, you weren't sure how long it was going to last, and you basically were trying to convince your parents to buy some Bitcoin so that if they had to leave, they could take some of their money with them. But that didn't work out, right?
No, my mom didn't trust it.
So sadly, August 2021, the U.S. system collapses. The Taliban take over Kabul, and the entire economy essentially just collapses and gets closed down, except for people like you who were able to still move money back and forth because you understood Bitcoin, and anyone who did understand it was free, even though everything was collapsing all around them. It worked. And that to me is just amazing. Like, even in the times of the craziest conflict and war, this thing still works. So that was shocking, right?
Yes, I mean, when the Taliban took over, as you mentioned, that the banking system has collapsed, and many of the people also who worked for the government previously, their banking account was freezing by private bank, either by the list that the Taliban provide, or by the bank that they feel that they didn't want that to get the Taliban's angry, so they freezing all those accounts. So the people basically, it wasn't only the politician or military, but also the civil society, the women activists, that they lost their access to their own money just because they work for the freedom, democracy, and then getting their financial access. So their monies was when the bank is freezing their account, it was a message for these women that their work, their services, and their future, it doesn't matter anymore, and they get punished socially and also economically just because they wanted to have a better lives. And at that time, Bitcoin and stablecoins were the only ways of the lifetime for many of the younger generation who had access to the digital scales, and they had access to cryptocurrency that we could send the money to them because the bank is collapsed. The Western Union didn't work. MoneyGram didn't work. And it was very difficult to send the money. Even the Hawala system at the time worked, but the Taliban started to control the Hawala system. And today, Hawala system should report every transaction to the Taliban. And the only ways that you can right now have your ways to send to Afghanistan's money is cryptocurrency. Even we thought that the Taliban is banned the cryptocurrency because they cannot have control on the
Like all dictators,
Yes.
they don't like something they can't control.
exactly.
So how many days has it been since girls were able to go to school in Afghanistan?
It's 1,380 days that the girls cannot go to the schools today. The Taliban banned educations and restricted the women's movement. Not only education, but also women don't have access to the work. They cannot have access to justice, and they cannot have access to healthcare. And we are talking about half of the population, almost 20 million people, which right now they are living in open prison by Taliban, which is a gender apartheid regime.
And but you're able to use Bitcoin to fund the underground education, which is
Yes.
amazing. Dollars just don't work.
Yes.
It's not like you can send a bank wire
Yes.
or PayPal. You're able to start new initiatives using Bitcoin, like comic books and even businesses. So this is providing like a completely new opportunity where before the door was closed, right?
Exactly, and thanks to the HRF that they are supporting our Zala program and also comic books. We really appreciate it, and we're getting some support for our underground education centers. That's the way that we can send a female. They don't have a bank account, but they can simply get paid if they have a wallet and internet access.
It's amazing. I mean, I think most people here are surprised to learn that Bitcoin is this basically this feminist tool. It's probably not what they thought it was, right? And that's the neat thing about it is the more you learn about it, the more you realize that it might be something different from what your original perception of it is. So I hope that's one thing you all can take away. So just to finish, I wanted to. I personally am shilling Roya's movie. She's not. I am. So Roya was the subject of an amazing movie that just came out recently. It's not a documentary. It's a film about her and her life. It's called Rule Breakers. Obviously, as you can see, it's done super well on Rotten Tomatoes, and with people love it. I watched it with my family. It's incredible. Roya's played by the actress in the middle, and it's the story of how it really centered around the time when you were building and training the girls' robotics team and the journey it took and getting into the United States and going to competitions and just how this was completely impossible and you made it happen. It's an awesome movie, and it is a good reminder of what a hero you are to so many. So thank you so much for being here, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Roya.
Thank you.